Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum level 5. I hope you all are safe and sound. As you guys know, we have already discussed the 9 chapters from our novel Kidnap, and only one chapter is left. But before going towards the next chapter, I'm going to give you the summary of the previous chapter. So my those students who have missed the class or they are not able to attend the lecture or watching the previous video, you guys may take help from this video. So I'm going to discuss the summary from first chapter till chapter 9. So, at the beginning of the novel, David Balfour is a recently orphaned 17 years old. His father has just died, so it is up to him to seek his own fortune. A good friend of his, the minister of education, hands David a letter from his deceased father telling him to head to the House of Shaws. David does not know how his father is related to the House of Shaws and why he is excited at the idea of meeting. He thinks maybe he will be able to get a job in the house. So finally, when David arrived at the house, however, he is much disappointed. The owner was actually David's uncle, Ebenezer Balfour. Ebenezer was a miser and a kind of irritating person. He even attempted to kill David on one occasion. Ebenezer Balfour promised to bring David to see his lawyer, Mr. Rankiller, to get a full explanation of Ebenezer's relationship to David's father. On their way to see Mr. Rankiller, Ebenezer insists on stopping by a ship that he was made some investment in, which is anchored in the seaside town of Queen's Ferry. The ship is called the Covenant. Soon, David realized that he has been kidnapped by the captain. The Covenant was still sailing around the Scotland, and one night the Covenant accidentally runs into a small boat. There was only one survivor from the boat, a man named Alan Brick Stewart. Alan and David soon became familiar with each other and they are now became friends. So they band together against the rest of the Covenant crew and they managed to hold their own, and finally they agreed captain to let Appin off in the Scottish Highland, where was Alan's home country. Alan was a Jacobite, meaning that he was a part of a Highland uprising against the English throne in 1745. He was a wanted man and he only feels safe at home in Appin. Unfortunately, the Covenant ran up against a hidden reef and sank. David was thrown from the ship by a wave and winds up washed ashore on the barren island of Erid. David suffered from hunger and thirst and all-around sickness for a while before discovering that the island he was only one on the island at the high tide. When the tide goes out, you can walk to the next island over the island of Mule, which David does. As David starts exploring the mule, he finds out that Alan has been leaving a coded message for him, instructing him on how to find him. David hides towards Alan's home of Appin and reaches the forest. After so many hardships, David finally managed to meet with Alan again. As a known rebel and deserter from the English army, Alan was also on the run, so they decided to try their luck together. They go on a tough trek through the dry, barren, often called Scottish Highlands, avoiding capture by both English soldiers and by the Campbell Callan. David fights off illness, fear, and frustration with Alan on a regular basis. Finally, after the much hardships, the two men reach the start of all the David's adventure, Queen's Ferry. Alan wanted to go from there to the France, where he will be safe from English soldiers, while David was eager to meet Mr. Rankiller and establish his rights to state of the House of the Shaws. Rankiller, the lawyer, does reassures David that he was the rightful to the Shaw estate. The trouble was that, in fight over a woman, brothers Ebenezer and Alexander Balfour signed an agreement that Ebenezer would get the estate and David would get a wife. This contract was not legally binding, said Rankler, but there would still need to be a lawsuit against Ebenezer for David to reclaim all of his rights. To avoid such a scandal, Rankiller suggested blackmailing Ebenezer into giving David his money while allowing Ebenezer to continue living in the House of Shaws. So that was the revision of the previous chapter, level 5. If you have any confusion or any problem, so you may ask. Now it's time for your assignment. So the question is, you have to describe the cruel nature of Ebenezer Balfour in 4 to 5 lines.